Hi, I'm Vanessa and I love bad Star Trek. I will be your waiter serving the mothball milkshake that is season 1 of Star Trek's Next Generation. Today, I will be talking to you about an episode called Justice, which apparently had some of the highest ratings of the entire season, second only to the premiere Encounter at Farpoint. But I'm fairly certain that it had absolutely nothing to do with it being Trek at all. On the bright side, there is a zygote of what makes the Next Generation work, which is fleshing out of Picard's character as someone that isn't just a caricature of a cranky boomer, a la Cosmo Spacely.
Jetson, you're fired!
We get a hint of Picard's flair for oration here, a dash of emotional depth and willingness to hear input there. But these two flying buttresses are not enough to support the weight of a really stupid derivative plot that sort of just plops and flushes away without impact despite its very promising elements. This episode, Justice, once again borrows from an original series deep cut. This time, the episode referenced is called The Apple, where extremely kind and underdressed group of Trump impersonators are lorded over by a machine. This machine takes care of them in exchange for total and complete submission. The papier-mâché snake is one of the more amusing original set pieces, except for maybe like the Huerta, because it's just some guy under a dirty blanket, pretty much. Justice's plot ends far less logically than that of The Apple, and yet simultaneously, you know exactly what's going to happen. It just takes a while to get there. And then they just leave, as is customary in season 1. Endings in this season feel as though you're driving and then hit a wall because a tunnel was painted onto it. There is also a bit of that Paradise Planet premise that repeats so often in the original series, where people beam down to an Eden-like planet hoping to relax. And it turns out that the planet is like deadly, and a poor chap in a red shirt ends up keeling over. The casualty of the crew of the Enterprise D's lack of judgment is no red shirt in Justice, but instead it's Wesley, almost, which Picard seems bizarrely casual about. Wesley is consistently the victim of the adults' bad decision making in this episode. In Justice, after helping to set up a Federation colony, the Enterprise D's crew is in need for some rest and relaxation, so they've come upon a nearby planet inhabited by humanoids called the Edo. The planet looks idyllic, but here's the modern twist that no one asked for comes in. Edo are a lawful people and also have sex, as they put it, at the drop of a hat, and as Tasha later clarifies,
any hat.
Are you intending to test this hypothesis, Tasha? I wish the episode was just her dropping like sombreros and a fedora and a beret. Who are we kidding? No one has sex at the drop of a fedora. Maybe they can use a stalk of celery as a control. And of course, Riker has this shit-eating grin on his face the whole time. The crew sounds like a bunch of kids trying to convince their parents to go to an amusement park or finally build that outdoor pool in the backyard.
Can we have a pool, Dad? Can we have a pool, Dad? Can we have a pool, Dad?
So speaking of parenting, here's where I become a little lost. Picard goes, "Hey Wesley, why don't you go with a very clearly horny away team and scope out the joint for people your age?" And then Beverly co-signs it. The only thing we know about this planet besides it being lawful, whatever that means, is that they like to do it. Is Beverly at her parenting best here? Maybe she regularly goes to swinger clubs and is like, hey, maybe there's kids there you can hang out with, to her teenaged son. And here comes my favorite part of the episode, the Edo's costumes. Someone took like a romper made of a bed sheet and just deleted triangles as many of them as they could get away with and still get it on TV. What is this motion? I'm like, I just don't understand how these costumes didn't just fall apart. The only other custom that the Edo appear to have is running, which is actually just jogging. And all of the Ito's bits are just hanging on for dear life. I honestly feel for the actors in this because one of them is obviously going to need to see a dermatologist for like a mole check because he is fried. He is burnt. All the Ito are like white and blonde, but somehow I do think it's worth mentioning that the sweet, naive, egalitarian, pre-warp native optics go to the conventionally attractive white people, and the unreasonable and violent people, well, need I bring up Code of Honor again? When Troy, Riker, Worf, Tasha, and Wesley beam to the planet, they have this elongated, awkwardly long ritual of erotically charged hugs, which Worf enjoys.
Oh, yes.
Nice planet.
And then all of the adults want to do it. So they leave Wesley completely unsupervised to hang out with other kids and to just go play on a planet they don't know very much about. My favorite scenes in this are in the sex club, I guess. And some group shenanigans are very, very heavily hinted at as this poor man's genitals are being choked to death, like you also get to see that the romper comes in different styles, but all of them look so flimsily constructed. Listen, the only thing I've ever sewn together is a pillow in middle school home economics. So I'm obviously not like a seamstress, but this cloth diaper attached with tissue paper lederhosen will probably shred to pieces if all they do is just lift their arms. Like, it's just really tight in the crotch area. My favorite scene in this is when Worf and Riker discuss Worf's sexual issues.
What about plain old basic sex? You must have some need for that.
Of course. But with the females available to me, sir, Earth females, I must restrain myself too much. They are quite fragile, sir.
And thus begins the myth and the legend that is crazy, rough, and bloody Klingon sex and their redundant anatomy. Oh, Discovery. So while the crew is ankle deep in strangers' genitals, Tasha finds out during a casual conversation that the penalty for doing anything besides having sex and jogging is death, pretty much. And then fully cut to Wesley accidentally falling into a flower bed. Row. Show of hands, who saw this coming? Everyone? Okay. My favorite outfits in this episode are the cops. Baby blue lives matter. But hey, ACAB, even the nipple brigade. Okay? The stupidest line in this episode comes from Wesley when the nip slip police ask him if he was lying about ruining the flowers.
I'm with Starfleet. We don't lie.
Will Wheaton, listen, I am speaking directly to you. First, too many W's in your name. I know you can't really help that, but it's hard to say. Second, you can't act your way into making a Boy Scout pledge sound good. I know that you very negatively critique your own acting in this, but this is not your fault. Someone wrote this down and made you say it. The other elements of this plot is, of course, the godlike entity, another one of those, which Picard encounters like someone who eats a very strong edible and accidentally activates their Alexa at 3 a.m.
State the purpose.
It's very Wizard of Oz. And here's the thing, the entity gives Picard a few very clear instructions, one of them being not to fuck around with the people on the planet, just leave them alone. And the entity hits Data with like a magic softball and does an information exchange, which I guess is meant to substitute for, I don't know, any meaningful dialogue. The only dialogue that takes place about this whack-ass law is when Space Dad beams down to see what the fuck is going on with this death penalty thing, because Earth, and by extension the Federation, doesn't practice that. And here, right here, is exactly the point where the entire episode just comes unraveled. Marshal Moose Knuckle okay, tells Picard that he should beam Wesley out and save him from certain death.
And since you are advanced in other ways too, I suggest you use your superior powers to rescue the Wesley boy.
Just beam him out, just encouraging a jailbreak. This is called removing the stakes. Sheriff Nuthager has, in one line, subtracted any reason for this episode to continue. Oh, but Wesley's fine, according to them, and they definitely won't kill him until sundown. I mean, they were ready to kill him when they found out that he messed with the flowers, but for some reason now they're gonna wait. It doesn't make sense. Remember the light bright? I mean, God, whatever, said don't fuck with my kids. That's exactly what Picard does, because he's like, I need someone to look at that thing I saw outside and confirm that it's God. We know, they know, there's no reason to do this, to forcibly kidnap one of the Edo. Oh, and they just sort of casually mention to Beverly, Wesley's mother, while they do this, that her kid is sentenced to death for, you know, breaking some flowers. And they're letting this continue because prime directive, but everything's gonna be fine. He's totally safe based on assumptions made on no information at all, except for the Edo are these horny people who kill people for rather arbitrary reasons.
He's being held safely until sundown.
When he faces execution.
Who's to say that Wesley won't break another rule while he's down there? I mean, I'm no mother, but I would have told Picard to beam my goddamn kid out, or I'm gonna boil that fish that lives in his ready room and eat it right in front of him. The bridge crew was so horny that they neglected to investigate what these folks do when their laws are broken. Like, it's great that they had a woman security officer on there, Tasha Yar, but it undermines the very purpose if she's repeatedly proven to be incompetent. Uhura, the communications officer on the original series, never missed a beat. And by contrast, so far this season, Tasha can't keep warring delegates from killing each other. She can't prevent a ritual fight to the death, and she can't keep a medical officer's kid from being killed because he stepped on some fucking flowers. Lastly, there's this one scene where after Picard tells Data to stop babbling, Picard actually apologizes to Data and they confer as equals about what to do regarding Wesley. And Picard and Data draw this conclusion that if they just beam Wesley out, that the ghost ship will destroy their ship since it's aware of the prime directive from that information exchange, because it would make them like hypocrites.
Would you choose one life over 1,000, sir?
It's just bad writing on top of bad writing at this point. None of it matters anyway because they beam Wesley out at the end. And it's just funny to me that the last speech of this episode, which is this rousing indictment of the not only the death penalty, but blindly punitive systems in general.
Our laws have been violated. What of justice?
What of justice to Wesley?
This episode gets so close. It gets so close to having a point, and even sort of touches on the imperialist tendencies of the Federation when the entity calls into question the colonization that they did on the other planet. But then it just falls completely apart. Moral of the story, don't let horny ass crew members oversee the well-being of a teenager. You know, this episode is like code of honor, honestly, except minus the racism and plus strangled genitals. Future Vanessa here. I'm skipping an episode and the next one's gonna have Q in it. Yeah. Till next time, I guess.